What if you had to live someone else's life tomorrow without knowing whose? It was an odd question, almost childlike in its simplicity. Yet, as we chewed on the implications, it became a hauntingly powerful thought experiment. What kind of world would I want to wake up in if I didn't know whether I'd be a CEO or someone sleeping on the steps of the train station? That question, though clumsily formed, led me down the philosophical rabbit hole of John Rawls' veil of ignorance. Rawls' idea is both elegant and discomforting. In constructing a just society, he proposes we should imagine we are designing its rules without any knowledge of who we will be in that society. You don't know your gender, your race, your wealth, intelligence, or abilities. You could be anyone. This forces you, if you're being honest, to design a system that protects everyone, not just the privileged few. Because you might wake up tomorrow and find yourself on the receiving end of that system. It sounds fair, doesn't it? Rawls calls this the original position, and it's a radical act of empathy masquerading as logic. But in the real world, where self-interest is the gravity that pulls most moral compasses slightly off-center, the veil is thin, and we rarely wear it for long. Still, the thought lingers. What would our world look like if our institutions, laws, and social norms were built from behind that veil? It wouldn't be perfect, nothing ever is, but maybe it would be kinder. That's the dream, isn't it? But here's the snag. Even with the most well-intentioned laws, fairness is elusive. It slips through the cracks of good intentions and lodges itself in the folds of our circumstances. Enter the murky world of moral luck. Imagine two young men, Tom and Larry, both brash and impulsive, both prone to starting fights after one too many drinks. One night, both of them punch someone in a bar. Tom's victim slips, hits his head, and dies. Larry stumbles back and walks away with a bloody nose. One is charged with manslaughter. The other is fined for disorderly conduct. Same action, different consequences. Is one more guilty than the other? This is the puzzle of moral luck, a term that philosophers Bernard Williams and Thomas Nagel explored with unsettling depth. They point out something we all sort of know but rarely say out loud. Our moral judgments are deeply influenced by factors beyond our control. A split-second decision, a gust of wind, a lucky or unlucky fall. These can be the difference between condemnation and forgiveness, between being seen as a villain or a fool. We're taught, culturally and ethically, to praise people for their good actions and blame them for their bad ones. But if outcomes hinge on luck, does that praise or blame make sense? Is morality just a cosmic lottery? It gets worse. Not only do we lack control over the outcomes of our actions, we also lack control over who we are. Our genetic makeup, our upbringing, the values instilled in us, the traumas that shaped us, none of these are chosen. They just happen to us, and yet we are held responsible for the person they produce. Does that mean there is no such thing as moral responsibility? Nagel, with his characteristic existential stoicism, doesn't offer a solution so much as a warning. If we think too hard about this, the whole structure of moral judgment starts to wobble. But perhaps that's not a reason to abandon it. Maybe it's a reason to deepen it, to humble it. It's tempting, in the face of these philosophical quandaries, to throw our hands up and declare morality a farce. But what if we looked at it differently? What if responsibility isn't about perfect autonomy or control, but about how we respond to the hand we've been dealt? Maybe moral agency lies not in having chosen our circumstances, but in how we engage with them. That doesn't mean ignoring the role of luck. It means integrating it into our understanding of justice. The philosopher Susan Wolf offers a compelling view here. She argues that our moral intuitions still matter, even in a world governed by moral luck. We can still make meaningful distinctions between people who try to do good and those who don't, even if their success is partially out of their hands. Responsibility, then, isn't black or white. It's layered, contextual, and nuanced. Maybe that sounds like a cop-out, but maybe it's also the only honest answer we have. And yet, this honesty doesn't give us a clear guide for action. It just complicates things. So we turn to another philosopher, to David Hume, who reminds us that there's an even deeper chasm in ethical thought. Hume's famous claim is deceptively simple. You can't derive an ought from an is. That is, no amount of factual description can tell you what you should do. You can describe the world down to its atomic detail, but you'll never find morality hiding in the data. This gap between facts and values haunts all moral philosophy. Why should we treat others fairly? Why should we care about those who are unlucky? These aren't empirical questions, they're existential ones. And yet, we do care. Most of us, anyway. Even if we can't justify it rationally, we recoil at injustice, we're moved by suffering, we root for the underdog. Our moral intuitions are messy, inconsistent, and deeply human. Maybe that's the point. Hume wasn't saying we can't have moral values. He was just reminding us that they come from somewhere else. Not from science or logic, but from human nature, from the heart. That might sound sentimental, but it might also be the most important insight of all. Because if fairness and justice aren't dictated by nature, then we must choose them. And that choice is what makes morality meaningful. Which brings us, finally, to the virtue that ties all of this together: compassion. If the world is unfair, and it is, then compassion isn't just a virtue. It's a necessity. It's what keeps us from hardening into cynicism or cruelty. It's what bridges the gap between theory and practice, between the is and the ought. Compassion says, I see you, not as a moral agent operating in a vacuum, but as a person shaped by forces beyond your control. It doesn't excuse harmful actions, but it contextualizes them. It doesn't erase responsibility, but it tempers judgment with understanding. And in a world where every moral judgment risks being distorted by luck, compassion is the closest thing we have to moral clarity. But cultivating compassion isn't easy. It requires imagination, humility, and emotional stamina. It asks us to see ourselves in others, and others in ourselves. It asks us to live, at least mentally, behind Rawls' veil, not just as a philosophical exercise, but as a way of being in the world. What strikes me about all these philosophical dilemmas is not how impossible they are, but how profoundly human they feel. We are creatures obsessed with fairness and accountability, yet we are also walking bundles of circumstances, shaped by forces we don't control. We want justice, but we live in a world of chance. We want moral clarity, but we live with messy emotions. We want to hold people responsible, but we also know how easily we could have been them. Maybe this is why forgiveness is so radical. It disrupts the tit-for-tat rhythm of moral judgment and says, you're more than the worst thing you've done. It allows for growth, for redemption, for transformation. And in that, it becomes an engine of moral progress. That doesn't mean we stop holding people accountable. But it means we do so with gentleness, with grace, with the understanding that we are all, in one way or another, at the mercy of luck. In the end, the veil of ignorance isn't just a thought experiment. It's a moral lens, a perspective shift, a gentle reminder to treat others as if we might be them, because in some cosmic lottery we very well could have been. Compassion is not the same as passivity. We can still resist injustice, punish harm, and demand better. But we do so with an awareness that every human being is, in some way, a product of circumstances beyond their control. And if we had been given their life, we might have made the same choices. In the words of Arthur Schopenhauer, boundless compassion for all living beings is the surest and most certain guarantee of pure moral conduct. Whoever is filled with it will assuredly injure no one, do harm to no one, encroach on no man's rights. He will rather have regard for everyone, forgive everyone, help everyone as far as he can. Maybe fairness, like perfection, is impossible. Maybe objectivity is forever out of reach. But compassion, that's within us. That's something we can practice. And if nothing else, it is compassion that might just save us in the end. Thank you for accompanying. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below so we can discuss. Wish you and your family good health.